Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel, Leilani of Barbados. I had to take a shower, girl, after I watched the interview. So I'm fresh out of the interview. It was not boring at all. Harry is the real star of the Harkle family, it turns out. I don't know if it's his media training when he was in the royal family. I don't know what it is, but he is compelling. He's captivating. When Meghan's there, like in the docuseries, it's bloody boring. But I could not tear myself away even to go to the bathroom, but we'll get into that. We'll get to that in a minute. Let me just tell you my takeaways. I have a whole notebook of notes. I could literally write a transcript for this interview, the amount of notes I took. It was over an hour. I will do a long form video if you want me to. But right now, I just wanted to get this out and tell you what the highlights were for me, my highlights. First of all, Dr. MATÉ'S diagnosis of Harry based on reading Spare. So Dr. MATÉ admits that he did not really want to read the Spare if it wasn't for this interview, but he did. And he has now diagnosed him with all the psychological disorders. The next highlight, Harry's psychedelic drug use. And the next one, which is tied to that, is his marriage with Meghan. Then the other thing was the mother despair and raising children with love. Then there's just other wild shit that Dr. GABOR talks about. Sorry, Dr. MATÉ talks about. Very disturbing stuff. And then, of course, the segment is questions from the audience. So those are the things I'm going to cover. Right. So let's start out with a diagnosis, because that is really the backbone of the interview. This was so interesting. And I don't think it was rehearsed and it was not planned. I'll tell you why. So Dr. GABOR says that he read the Spare. He wasn't really going to read it, but yeah, he had to because he was going to have this interview, and that he has diagnosed Prince Harry. So Prince Harry says, should I look into that or should I just take it at your diagnosis? And then Prince Harry goes and looks over at Dr. MATÉ'S notes and says, that's a long list. And from then he gets extremely defensive. And as the interview goes on, is constantly punctuated with Dr. MATÉ trying to give him his next diagnosis and Harry just trying to like talk around it, like just distract from that. And the first thing he talks about is ADD. He said he thinks he has ADD. And that from then you can see the back goes up on Harry and he's like, okay, well, so the diagnosis is ADD, PTSD, which then Harry corrects and says the real medical term should not be PTSD. It should be PTSI, because when you say disorder, that is not the right word to use, and words are very important. And he literally starts writing a medical journal of what he thinks psychological terms should be in medicine, right? And he says it should be PTSI, which is injury, because an injury and it can be cured, in his opinion. You know, throughout this, the most cringe thing is that Prince Harry is not very clever, and he knows he's not very clever, but it's so cringy when he thinks he is using his brain and being clever. That's so hard to watch. I don't know. It's like he's so desperate to be told he's smart, even though he says, you know, I just wanted to do outdoor stuff. I wasn't into the books, you know, but when it comes to the medical science and anything like that, he does actually, like, he's like one of those people. I know we all know these people who are like, oh, let me go on WebMD. No, that's not what you have. What you have is cringe, man. Especially coming from a family of doctors. For me, it's very cringe. So it's PTSI, ADD, depression. I have to see, this is why I have to do the long form one, because I have all the notes. But it's very difficult because throughout the entire interview, Harry is trying to stop this man from saying what he has. So, and that's why I had to write notes. Okay, Harry's psychedelic drug use. OMG, I knew it. I knew it. I got this source which said that he is into that and hanging out with people like that. And that he is in San Fran hanging out with the guys and the guys and the whatever who are into that. He definitely, look, so I am very anti-drug. Everyone in my life knows that. The kids in LA right now, all the TikTokers, all of the pranksters and the people who got a bunch of money really quickly from being online, and they buy all the houses in Hollywood Hills and they're the rich and famous now. Okay. They have so much money. They don't know what to do with it. And I listen to these podcasts where they're interviewing these people. That whole culture is all about this thing called ayahuasca. And whenever they're interviewed about their success and how they got to make it. And they always talk about, well, we're into the ayahuasca. And what they do, right, with all this money, they buy this shaman a ticket to come from South American jungle with his basket of treats, come to them in Hollywood Hills and sit them down and dose them with this ayahuasca. Okay. And they go on a trip, a psychedelic trip, apparently, where it lasts 3 minutes, but it feels like 3 hours. And they can revisit people who they have lost in their lives, people who they can just have a euphoric feeling where they feel really good about themselves and everything's great and they have no stress. We don't know the effects of the ayahuasca. We do know that from the 70s, the acid trips and stuff, some people went away and they didn't come back. You know, those kind of people, those hippies. Sorry, those hippies that went away and never came back. We know of that, but we will never know until like 20 years what happens to these people that are into this ayahuasca in LA at the moment. Well, he loves it. And he's even going more into this whole idea that actual drugs from the pharmacy that the doctor prescribes, that's just a scam. And he does this really cheeky, it's a boarding school boy thing where they think it's like a got you thing, where he asks Dr. Mate, like, but don't all the doctors get money for prescribing drugs that people don't need? I know something. I know a conspiracy. And I'm just like cringe. I'm cringe about it. I believe in science. I believe in medicine. So to me, he should not go there with his ayahuasca, because that's all he's learned. You know, LA is literally the worst place they could have moved to. I wish they had moved to New York City. I like LA. I love LA. I love it. And I love New York City. I just wish it was New York City so that people could have been real with them and made them real. Because going to LA has made him so phony and fake. It's literally the worst thing that could have happened to him if he's really this traumatized in life, I think. He says, now this is going into the marriage, he has up to the point where he talked about marriage, always referred to Megan as my wife, the same way she does about my husband, right? When he gets to the part where Dr. Mate asks him about his marriage, he then refers to her as partner, which I found very interesting. And then he talks about her as well. She's a spectacular woman. She's this amazing woman of her own accord. You talk about your boss, who you actually like your boss. Or like if you're a medical student and you talk about the top surgeon in the hospital where you have to work at, and he may be a bit rough on you, but you just respect him so much because of all his accolades. That's how he's talking about her when he's asked about his marriage. But he also mentions that she gives him his space. Okay? Which makes me think that this source who told me that he's hanging out in San Fran doing drugs is absolutely correct, that his condo is there. And she's probably like, look, go do your psychedelics. I wonder if he was actually microdosed with mushrooms just to like come on this show, right? Because he really got hype when he talked about drugs. And she probably said, look, go over there to San Fran and do your drugs. And I'll be here in this mansion counting the money you're making for me. Okay. And then when I'm done doing that, I'll call Serena Williams and she won't answer the phone. And then I'll call the old man Getty and say, do you want to sleep with me? And try to sleep with him, because by then I would have ended up counting the money and realizing that it's not enough for me. Thank you for answering my questions about that, by the way, everyone. Oh my God. She's like, go and go. She has enough money. She doesn't have to have any help from him, really. She has nannies or whatever, if the children are there or not there. That's what he's happy about, which is not really something you heard from them before, because you'd always hear from them like, we're together, and there's the claw, the Megan claw, always on him. Like, eh. Now he's like, no, she gives me my space to do what I want to do. That's interesting. All right. The next thing, the mother despair in raising children with love. Well, I have to give Harry some respect for this. He actually challenged Dr. Mate and said, I think I read that you felt abandoned by your mother because she went away for 6 weeks. Dr. Mate cuts him off and says, yes, I was abandoned by my mother. And actually, today, I act like a baby because I regress to that abandonment. And I'm told, you're doing the baby thing. And I'm like, oh yes, that's because I'm reverting to that time when I was abandoned. And yes, she did it to save my life. He says that. But it doesn't take away the fact that I never felt good enough because I felt she was able to abandon me. I was like, oh, Oh, he's a narcissist. He goes on to say that his entire career of becoming this big doctor and everything was based on him trying to be good enough for his mother, who went on holiday for 5 weeks to save his life. He won't let it go. He's sticking to his story. She made him feel that way at that time, and that was a trauma that was in his mind at that time, and it has not gone away, and it's still there, and everything he does, and it molds his life even today because she went away for 5 weeks. Jordan Peterson would never. This is a low rent Jordan Peterson. Oh, other wild things that Dr. Maté talks about. So it really held my attention, this interview, for such a long time. I really had to use the loo, and I finally said, okay, I'll get up and use the loo, but I'll bring my laptop to the loo door so that I can still hear it. Let me tell you something. I had to get off the toilet with my pants like half down just to look at this Dr. Maté's face when he said this shit. Okay. He said that black women are treated the worst because they're not only women, but they're also black. And because of that, they have the highest death rate giving birth to their children. Because the mind and the bad treatment of the people treat them so bad that they die in childbirth, dude. I was like, say what? Say what the fuck? So I came out to look at his face, and of course it was the same stoic look, like, because I said he doesn't change his facial hair. And I suddenly felt sick. I felt like, can I tell you how I really felt? I felt like he's fetishizing and tokenizing black women so much. He's trying to say they're so weird that because they get treated badly, they die in like he's making them experimental and weird. And it reminds me of the Nazi experiments on black people, especially black men, where they like cut off their penises and they see if it would regenerate because they thought they were so different from normal people that they could do weird experiments on them to see if they would like act differently from white people. It's giving me that weirdness. And he is very much in his own right, being Jewish, being a Holocaust survivor, and yet siding with anti-Semites and also Palestinians who are bombing Israel, where Jewish people are. He sides with them. Okay, the Palestinian, he sides with terrorism, and it does come up in this, and he does double down on this. So anybody in my last video that said, oh, Dr. GABOR is Jewish, how could he not? No, he talks about it in this interview that he agrees with terrorists, okay? Arab ones, okay? And that's what he wants to do as a Jewish man. Let him do it. But this particular comment sounded so fetishized and so tokenized and so bizarre that I had to really look at him, because of course we know, my therapist has told me too, your mind and your body. So like you can get pains in your body from stress, you know, you have like endocrine system that can react to stress as well, and you feel certain things physically because of your mental state. Everyone knows that, but to say something so far out like that, it is very, you're a weirdo. And obviously he thought about it, because in that moment he then asks Harry about racism and how it affected him. And he talks about, you know, it's the same thing, unconditional bias. I mean, bias, or why bias? Why bias? You had all the education in the world, with a multicultural society in England. Like, why would you be what's unconditional bias? Like, oops, stop it. You don't have it. Why are you using that word all the time? But anyway, he did a good job of not really speaking on race, which I think was good, because I don't think he gets well received when he speaks on race for some reason. So it was good that he kind of circumnavigated that question. But as he asked the question, you see Dr. Maté is thinking, and I think he realized that sounded really weird, what I just said. So he says, in my country, Canada, the native women have 5% of all the rheumatoid arthritis, but then they're also 50% of the prison population. So even in my country, Canada, with a native race, the rheumatoid arthritis is causing them to do crime, or the crime is causing them to have whatever he was trying to say. You could see he was like, I need to fix this. But it didn't fix it for me. It just sounded like he was even more experimenting with people who have women who are of different ethnicity from him, and it gave me cringe. It gave me cringe. Never let this man do a study. Never let him, you know, test out any drugs on anybody, please. Okay? Because you know who'll be going first? Me. He will get me in there to test on me. I'm sorry. There were moments in this interview where I did like Dr. Maté. I must tell you, he wears these rings, even though he's dressed like an insurance salesman. But then he has these like cool, right, like rock star rings on kind of thing. He was interesting at one point. But when that happened, I was like, okay, I'm checking out of this hotel. A fan I am not anymore. Then they had questions from the audience. Okay. And yes, to answer your question, I did have a question, actually. It was actually from a subscriber of mine, TT22. I wonder if the wonderful doctor will scold Harry and the missus for leaving their children all the time, therefore making them undeniably traumatized and despaired. And I asked the question, would Dr. Maté find that Harry and Meghan leaving their children all the time could traumatize them in the same way that he was traumatized as a baby? And of course, it didn't get chosen, but 6 questions were chosen altogether. Interestingly, one of them that was chosen, I think she was called Julia. And although Harry asked the name of each person who was asking the question, like he said to Dr. Maté is reading the questions, and he says, oh, what's her name? And Dr. Maté would tell him. With one of the people who was called Julia, Harry said, hi, Julia. And I think he knew her because the question was, are you practicing self-compassion, Harry? And of course, that was such a great setup. That was such a great like layup, because he immediately said, oh no, I'm only happy to make other people happy. And I'm just so used to getting joy from other people that I don't really focus on self-compassion, but I'm trying now to work on that. Even though it's not my nature, it's not who I am. Who I am is helping other people. That's who I am. And so I don't know. I just had a little bit of a curiosity conspiracy theory thing about that. What other conspiracy theories did I have? The other conspiracy theory I had was that this was not live. Okay. Dr. Maté was not virtual with Harry. They were in the same room. In fact, Harry said, thank you for making it through the snow. They're in the same room in front of the same fireplace, and there are 3 camera angles, which makes it very easy to edit the video. I do that with my son, because his videos are more editing is required with his videos. So I usually set up 2 cameras so that I can chop it up, and they can do that here. And then they can just run the video in a live stream as if it's live. Because for me, I need to see live chat to believe it's a live. You understand what I'm saying? They didn't have any live chat, because with live chat, then they have to read the chat and answer the questions live. If you're not doing that, I don't believe you. They could have chopped out this interview just like any other Anderson Cooper or any other interview and then presented it to us like it was happening right now. I'm going to do a longer form one, I think. It's fun and I hope you will enjoy it. This is my notebook. It's so, my God, so full of so many cool stuff. Okay, lots of love to you. I love you so much. And bye, and thank you for watching. Come and say bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, thank you for watching. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Subscribe and press the bell notifications.
But nothing